Welcome to Under the Rug at Work, where I shine light on things that are normally swept under the rug. Today, I'm chatting with Jess Price about how everything at work is interconnected. Jess is the founder of Paradigm Makers, which exists to create a way of working designed for the world we live in. Kind of logical, right? Thank you so much for joining me, Jess. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Nicole. It's
Having you
nice
back.
to be back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been on the podcast before and you shared your experience of psychological harm. Can you share with us what's happened since then? It was about 12 or 18 months ago, I think. And how are you going now?
Yeah, it's been a while. Um, Everything's been going really well. So the last time we spoke, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. When I grew up, I was trying to still figure that out. But I spent a lot of last year actually talking to people and trying to decide what impact I wanted to have at work. And the more I started exploring the concept of work and how we ended up with the work that we currently have, the more I realized that we had an opportunity right now to change how we work, which is how it's always worked. So previously, we got new technology and then we actually adapted how we worked to that technology. But then we stopped doing that in the 70s. And now I am really excited to actually be part of that solution where we can identify what is broken at work, what are we sweeping under the rug, and how do we actually fix it to make work for people.
Yeah. Which when you say it out loud, it sounds really logical, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think the challenge that we've got is that it's so complex.
Mm.
And so we think that the solution is a lot harder than it actually needs to be.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what I want to do. I want to show people that you can work differently and actually give them the steps and the tools and the resources to make it happen.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is we get so busy doing the work, trying to keep the doors open, just trying to manage life really, and we forget about trying to work on the business instead of in the business, no matter where we're at. So, your tools, your frameworks, what you're doing at Paradigm Makers really helps people by making it easier, as you said. Yeah.
Mm.
So, one of the things that you have in Paradigm Makers is the essential elements of work framework. Can you share with us what that is and what it does?
Yeah, so I wanted to identify what are the common elements of work that have always existed. So I did a deep dive, went all the way back to the Stone Age and traced the evolution of work to identify what those common features were. And so I've come up with 5. So we've got people, innovation, technology, economics, and norms. And so each of these elements, they contribute something different to work, and they're all interconnected. But what I identified in my research is that around the 50s, 60s, 70s, we stopped considering these elements as all interconnected and for the benefit of society, corporations, and individuals. And we started to prioritize that economic element. And so everything became about money. How are we getting more money? How are we passing that money on to shareholders? And what happened, and I think we've all got experience with this, is that push for the economic element of work was to the detriment of all the other elements.
Mm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And we don't look at it big picture. We even when it comes to the code of practice, people are so confused because they're doing risk assessments on individual hazards where it should be looked at holistically, right? Because
Yeah.
role overload, for example, we can manage that if we've got the good support of a manager and a good team. But as soon as you've got something else going on and it kind of piles up, then that's when it becomes an issue. So yeah, I think you're going to be sharing some more on this on LinkedIn. So I recommend that if you're not already to follow Jess on LinkedIn, and I'll also share a link to the previous podcast as well, so people can learn a little bit more about you too. But how does the framework, how does that address the human elements of work? And I suppose why is it so important for modern workplaces these days?
Yeah, so so we have the 5 core elements, and then within each of those, I've broken it down further with an additional 5 secondary elements. So I won't read all 25 out now because that's a lot. But each of the elements is designed to actually capture something that happens at work. So if we look at it, people, for example, one of them is outcome. So when we talk about work, what we're actually talking about is the outcome. So if you're allocated a task, what is the actual outcome that that task is designed to capture? And we seem to have this disconnect where we're doing all of this work for no reason and not understanding why we're doing it. And so what I wanted to be able to do was to be able to identify what these sub-elements, these secondary elements were, and then how we can actually link it back to what we actually do every day at work. So everything that we do is intentional and it has a specific purpose in mind. And we know how it feeds into that, the interconnectedness of everything else that we're doing.
Mm. And people just need that simplicity,
They
right?
do. Yeah. And it's when you look at the framework that I've come up with, and I'm sure it's going to continue to evolve. It's already had a few changes already in the feedback I've received over the last couple of weeks. But if we can understand and articulate how something is feeding into everything else, then that helps us understand what we're doing at work that doesn't actually fit within the things that we need to be doing. And that means we can eliminate it. We're doing it because that's how we think that we have to do something, or it's something that we think we have to do, but we actually don't need to when you actually dig deep and understand why we're doing it now.
Yeah, fantastic. And we're both in the psychosocial hazards and safety space. So how does the framework, how can that be applied to identify and manage hazards in the workplace?
Yeah, so that's something I'm working on at the moment. Is I wanted to understand, we've got all of these hazards that we talk about. We both are quite familiar with them. We talk about them quite often. And I wanted to be able to understand what are hazards that are associated with each of the secondary elements. So if we look at outcome again as an example, one of the things that might be contributing to a hazard in that space is creating ambiguous roles that lead to confusion and inefficiency. So if someone has a role where they don't really understand the purpose of the role, or they're doing something they don't understand with a clearly defined outcome, then that's obviously going to have an impact on their ability to function at work. And then if we look at something like innovation, when you have psychosocial hazards, that creates an environment of fear. And so when people are fearful at work, that can't coexist with innovation, because innovation is all about taking risks and doing things differently and creating that safe space where it is okay to try new things without fear of retaliation or retribution. And what I wanted to be able to do is show how each of these hazards are actually appearing at work, and then demonstrate just how simple they really are to identify them, but then also show that bigger impact that they're having on individuals. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what the feedback is about it, and to see if it actually helps to simplify all of the complexity, because when we talk about psychosocial hazards in particular, it's really hard to understand what they actually mean and how they actually appear at work and what the actual implications are and how it's interconnected to everything else. It's not a people problem. It impacts people, innovation, economics, technology, and norms. It impacts everything.
Yeah. And just getting back to your point at the start, organizations really focus on the finances, which they should. If we don't have them, then we can't keep the doors open. But if you get all this stuff right, then the flow-on effect is more productivity, is more profitability. People stay around for years because they feel part of the organization. They feel valued. They feel like they can be themselves and they can add value and that they belong as well. So that's what the psychosocial safety is all about, and what the framework and what you're doing at Paradigm Makers to link those together and really simplify it and make it easy. Yeah.
Yeah. I've come across a few recent stats, which you may or may not be aware of already, Nicole. So the Productivity Commission's mental health inquiry found that workplace mental health costs the Australian economy up to $39 billion in lost participation and productivity. And the Australian Institute Centre for Future Work found that preventing mental health problems that are caused by psychosocial hazards could expand Australia's GDP by $3.5 billion per year.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And there's quite a few stats out there. And you even look at, the safe work stats, how long it takes for people to recover from a
Mm,
mental health claim, and how much more it costs. I think it's 4 or 5 times more. And some people don't even go back to work. Like the financial costs and implications for organizations is just becoming more obvious. But as you said, the solutions are quite simple. It's just that we haven't really worked a lot in this space. So we need some help. We need some tools. We need to be talking about these kind of things.
mm.
And yeah, your model really shows, and the framework really shows how things are interconnected and kind of helps link that for people. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I think the stat that really got me is that mental health workers' comp claims have increased 36.9% since
Mm.
2017,
Yeah.
2018.
Yeah.
And that's really concerning because we want it to be going down, not
Yes.
up. And I think when we get next year's stats, they're going to be even worse, just
Yeah.
based on conversations I've had this year with leaders,
Mm.
particularly around their workers' comp claims for this year. They're even noticing significant increases.
Mm.
So now's the time to take hazards seriously and actually do the things that are needed to be done to eliminate them, because ultimately it'll save you a lot of money in the long run.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's just not a lot out there. I mean, we've been dealing with physical safety and physical hazards for decades, and we are
Mm.
really good at it now. And we're, focused on reducing the harm and, having eh, minimizing the risk. But psychological, because everyone's different, it's tricky. Everyone, even during the same day, we can act and behave differently as well. So, um, yeah, I recommend for anyone that's out there, when you need to dive into the psychosocial safety, psychological health of your organization as well. And it's tools like this, and events like, for example, the summit that's coming up in October, that really help to just dive into the really tricky stuff. We can't manage it if we don't talk about it, and if we don't have the tools to do that. So you are a summit supporter as well. So I
I
just want to
am,
say a
yes.
huge thank you for that. But you were also the keynote speaker in the 2023 summit, the World
Yes.
Lived Experience Summit for Bullying and Sexual Harassment. So um, as a bonus for anyone who comes along to the Psychosocial Safety Summit in October, they actually get the Lived Experience Summit for free. So in the lead up, you can kind of watch that prior, and you'll be there, so people will be able to meet you as well. So I'm super excited about that too.
Yeah, yeah, I'm super excited as well. I obviously know a lot about my experience with the hazards, and I know about the hazards as kind of a theoretical concept. So what I'm really excited about the summit, what I'm really looking forward to, is actually hearing from the experts who can share their expertise on things like addiction and alcohol in the workplace and domestic violence and all of those kind of things that I don't know anything about. And
Yeah.
I think they're really important issues that we do need to be talking about.
Mm.
Yeah.
And we have a retired Paralympian, Cameron Carr, who is going to be talking about the psychological impact of physical injuries. So while we might be advanced when it comes to physical, it still happens. And there
Mm.
is that aspect where we sometimes forget that it's not only a physical injury, that there's psychological harm that comes with that, and potentially with the return to work process or the treatment, or there's lots of things around that. So there's topics that, similar to what we do here on Under the Rug at Work, we really shine light on the things that people don't talk about, and we're doing that even more so at the summit, to be able to shed light on the really tricky things. One of the thing I'm talking about is gender and generational differences, and I've seen so many conversations shut down as soon as these things come up, and that doesn't help anyone. So we need to
Mm.
have these kind of conversations. We need to get together and chat about it further, and give people tools to be able to know what to do in these situations, because freezing up and shutting down conversation is only going to harm even further. So
Yeah. I think just to add on to that as well, I think we think about work-life balance, which is a myth, and I hate the phrase work-life balance because it doesn't exist.
mm,
We are the same person whether we're at home or at work.
it's just
Anything that's
life,
happening
right?
at home, yeah, anything that's happening at home is going to have an impact at work.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to, how we need to change that conversation, because anything going on in your life, whether it's happening at work or at home, is going to impact your work or home life. And just because something is happening to you in your personal life, that doesn't mean that it's not going to show up at work.
Mm.
So employers need to understand that even if it is a personal problem, it's a work problem as well, because it is actually going to be having an impact.
Yeah.
And yeah, you may not see that impact immediately, but if someone's coming and they've in a domestic violence situation, that may impact their colleagues as well.
Yes.
If the colleagues happen to see something, or and I think that's what we need to be talking about more as well.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you'll definitely see that if there's, alcohol issues, whether it's a social event and alcohol's involved, or whether, there's alcoholism and addiction, and that can seriously impact people's physical and psychological safety in the workplace as well. So yeah, we have to be having these conversations, and I really appreciate you coming back on the pod. And I'm
Thanks for
so
having me.
excited about your business and what you're doing. For anyone who's interested, what's the best way to connect with you?
LinkedIn is the
LinkedIn?
best way. Yep, LinkedIn. I've started sharing all my work in progress as well. So if you want behind the scenes of what a draft strategic plan looks like, go to my LinkedIn. You'll find all of that information up there.
Awesome. And I'll share the
Yeah.
link in the show notes as well.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank you as well, Nicole, for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, I really appreciate your support, and I really enjoy working with you as well, because I think we both have something really valuable to contribute in this space. And I love being able to partner with you on different things so we
Yeah,
can actually have an impact.
me too. Thank you so much, Jess. Really love it.
Thanks
And
for
I can't
having
wait
me.
to meet you in person at the
I
summit.
know, it's going to be exciting. I don't know if you're tall or short.
Everyone's shorter in person, I feel.
It's going to be great. It's going to be sunny as well.
It will. It will.
Yeah,
It'll be great. A great couple of days to be able
it
to
will.
connect with amazing people who are all on the same page about psychological safety and just wanting to learn more, grow more, and network with other people doing amazing things as well. And yeah, let's just dive in there. We're going to dive into the toughest stuff that's out there. And I can't wait. So yeah, really looking forward to it. Thanks so much, Jess.
Thanks for having me.